It started with a whisper, the kind that ripples through the polished corridors of palaces and the buzzing corners of the internet like wildfire cloaked in silk. A child born into royalty but wrapped in secrecy. A mother celebrated by the world, her image immortalized on magazine covers and cheered by adoring fans. Yet beneath the glowing surface of the so-called modern fairy tale, something was always off. The cameras caught what they were supposed to, but not what they weren't meant to see. And now, years later, that very illusion threatens to unravel in the most devastating way possible. In a revelation that has left royal watchers stunned, and even the most hardened cynics silenced, a woman no one expected has stepped forward, not seeking attention, not asking for money, but simply demanding truth. Her words, now echoing across headlines, social media, and hushed dinner tables around the globe, "I am Lilibet, Diana's biological mother, and I have the proof." Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. The phrase lands like a sledgehammer on a glass crown. This isn't just gossip. It's a seismic accusation that touches the highest reaches of the British monarchy, undermines one of the most heavily guarded royal birth stories in modern history, and calls into question the very nature of Meghan Markle's motherhood. The woman behind the claim is not a tabloid opportunist nor a shadowy source leaking from the shadows. She's real. She's public. And she says she has DNA results from a certified, court-recognized laboratory that leave no room for doubt. Not only that, she says those results were obtained legally and under the supervision of a neutral third party. There is a paper trail. There are signatures. There are seals. No more speculation. No more guessing games. The data, she says, speaks for itself, and the world is listening. But before we arrive at the cold sting of science, we must return to the heat of the illusion, to the very beginning, when Meghan Markle and Prince Harry first announced that they were expecting their second child. The photograph they used was straight out of a storybook. Meghan, lying under a tree in a sunlit field, her head resting in Harry's lap, her hand placed gently on a rounded belly. It was shot remotely by a friend, they said, using an iPad during lockdown. The photo radiated peace, love, and hope. It felt like the triumph of a couple who had fought for privacy, finally finding joy on their own terms. And yet, behind the serene smiles, whispers grew louder. Some noted how Meghan's appearance seemed to fluctuate, the size and shape of her bump shifting dramatically between public outings. Others pointed out that she was rarely, if ever, seen entering or exiting a medical facility, unlike traditional royal pregnancies, which followed strict protocols. Lilibet's birth announcement was equally unconventional. A brief online statement with no photo, no hospital details, no press call, and no official certificate released to the public. Royal observers, already suspicious after the similar lack of transparency around Archie's birth, found themselves asking, what exactly was being hidden? Was this just another example of Meghan and Harry's war against the British press? Or was there more? For years, speculation about Meghan's pregnancies was dismissed as conspiracy. Social media debates turned into battlegrounds, with hashtags like #moonbump and #surrogategate triggering outrage on both sides. Palace sources refused to comment. Meghan and Harry ignored the rumors entirely. The press, fearing legal repercussions, stepped back. But the questions never truly disappeared. They merely fell quiet, until now. Now, those whispers have transformed into a hurricane. The woman stepping forward claims she was approached discreetly in early 2020. According to her, representatives from a private third-party agency in California made her an offer, generous compensation in exchange for total discretion. Her role was never to be known, never to be acknowledged, never to be seen. It was a closed-door arrangement, she says. She was told she was helping bring a royal child into the world in a way that would protect the mother from public scrutiny. She claims she signed multiple confidentiality agreements and was told the child would be well cared for, adored, even. She didn't ask many questions then. She needed the money. She was told it would be a modern solution to an old-fashioned problem. But as time passed, the guilt grew. In her sworn statement, she says she began following the child's life from a distance, watching the media circus, the royal interviews, the Netflix documentaries. Seeing the carefully curated photographs of Meghan holding a baby she insists is biologically hers, It became too much. The illusion turned unbearable. Every time I saw her, the woman says, it felt like watching someone else hold a piece of my soul. She tried to suppress her pain. She tried to live with the deal she had made. But then something changed. According to her legal team, new state-level surrogacy legislation gave her the right to request a DNA test under specific conditions, citing emotional distress and identity rights. She pursued the matter privately, through the courts, away from the cameras. And finally, after months of legal wrangling, she says the results came in. The verdict? A near-perfect maternal match to Lilibet Diana. To be clear, the claim doesn't hinge on rumors anymore. It hinges on documentation. Legal-grade DNA results, issued by a laboratory accredited by the ABB, the gold standard for biological testing in the United States. The results reportedly show a 99.999% probability that the woman is the biological mother of the child the world knows as Princess Lilibet Diana Mountbatten-Windsor. The implications are staggering. Because if this woman is telling the truth, and if the test holds up under legal scrutiny, then Meghan Markle, one of the most scrutinized and controversial women of the decade, never gave birth to the daughter she has called her own since June 2021. For Meghan, this revelation could be more than embarrassing. It could be catastrophic. Her public identity has been built, in large part, around her motherhood, her experiences as a biracial woman raising royal children in a foreign culture, her fight to shield them from perceived media harm, her interviews with Oprah and others, in which she spoke of protecting her family at all costs. She has been praised as a modern, progressive mother who broke traditions. But if this claim is proven, then that narrative collapses in on itself. The consequences could echo beyond personal scandal and into legal territory, including possible fraud, public deception, and royal dishonor. For Prince Harry, the emotional stakes are even more tragic. If he knew about the surrogacy, then he's a co-conspirator in a global charade. If he didn't, then he's a man betrayed by the very person he abandoned his kingdom for. A man who walked away from everything, his family, his titles, his military honors, in the name of love and loyalty, only to discover he may not even share the bond he thought he did with his own daughter. Imagine finding out the child you sang to, held close, protected from paparazzi, wasn't biologically yours, and you weren't told. And what about the monarchy? Lilibet Diana was named after Queen Elizabeth herself, a deeply symbolic gesture meant to bridge generations. She was seen by many as a potential path to reconciliation, a shared legacy in a family torn apart. Her birth was a moment of healing in a time of rupture. If it turns out the child's very origin story was fabricated, or worse, legally misrepresented, it would be a scandal of unimaginable proportions. Questions of legitimacy, succession, and status would surge. And for King Charles and Prince William, both already strained by years of conflict with Harry and Meghan, the revelation could be the final break. But most tragically of all, at the center of this firestorm is a little girl. An innocent child who has become the subject of global debate, her parentage questioned, her very identity dissected. She didn't choose this. She didn't ask to be born into controversy. Yet now, because of decisions made before she could speak her first words, her life has become a legal and ethical battleground. No matter how the truth unfolds, she will one day read the headlines. She will ask questions. She will seek answers. And she deserves them. This is a story not just of scandal, but of silence, of how powerful people, desperate to control the narrative, hid behind contracts and PR spin, hoping the truth would never surface. But truth, like a buried seed, eventually grows. And now, its roots are cracking the pavement. In the chapters ahead, we will break down the evidence, the timeline, the contracts, and the fallout. We'll hear from insiders, medical experts, legal analysts, and ordinary people who saw the signs long ago. We'll ask the questions that matter, and that no one dared to before. Because the truth is out, and it can't be buried again. The image was carefully composed, a portrait of serenity and soft rebellion against tradition. Meghan Markle, barefoot and glowing in a white dress, lay nestled in the grass beneath a tree in Montecito, her head gently resting on Prince Harry's lap. His smile was easy, her expression joyful. The late afternoon light filtered through the leaves, turning the moment golden. It was the photograph that announced to the world that the Duke and Duchess of Sussex were expecting their second child. It was also, many would later argue, the first sign that something was very wrong. On its surface, the picture was a masterclass in emotional manipulation, not necessarily malicious, but calculated to perfection. Meghan was presented not as a royal, but as a woman of the people, natural, barefoot, connected to the earth. There was no hospital bed, no medical gown, no team of physicians in the background. It felt authentic, vulnerable, organic. But in that very authenticity lay the seed of suspicion. The very absence of traditional indicators of pregnancy is what triggered a second look. A few eagle-eyed observers didn't see what was supposed to be seen, and they began to speak. The earliest doubts came not from professional royal watchers or the mainstream press, but from regular people online. Bloggers, anonymous Twitter users, Instagram accounts dedicated to dissecting royal fashion. They weren't out to attack, at least not at first. They simply noticed things that didn't add up. In one photo, Meghan's bump appeared low and firm. In another, high and soft. One day she looked 6 months pregnant. The next, 3. The changes were subtle but, over time, impossible to ignore. The internet started whispering a question it had once asked during her first pregnancy with Archie. Is the bump real? As days turned into weeks, more strange details emerged. Meghan made only a handful of public appearances during the pregnancy. When she did, her wardrobe often seemed to conceal more than reveal. Flowing dresses, oversized coats, heavy layering, even in mild weather. The silhouettes were not consistent with a natural pregnancy progression. In one televised Zoom interview, she stood to adjust her camera and turned slightly to the side. Her bump, inexplicably, was gone. Theories began to multiply. Was she using a moon bump, a synthetic silicone belly sometimes used by actresses during film shoots? Was this an elaborate attempt to avoid the intense scrutiny that came with royal childbirth? Was she hiding a medical condition? Or was something even more complicated unfolding behind the scenes? Instead of addressing the growing chatter, Meghan and Harry leaned further into privacy. They announced that the baby would be born in the United States, far away from prying British tabloids. No press conference would follow the birth. No traditional photo op on the hospital steps like William and Kate had done with each of their children. No royal press pool. No official naming ceremony on palace grounds. The delivery would be on their terms, or so they insisted. When Lilibet Diana Mountbatten-Windsor was finally born, the news arrived not through Buckingham Palace, but through Archewell, the couple's own website. The statement was brief, bordering on clinical. Lilibet had arrived healthy and happy. Meghan and baby were doing well. There was no hospital listed, no attending physician named. The birth certificate was not released. The couple requested privacy as they bonded with their newborn. It felt odd, not because of the request itself, which was understandable, but because it seemed like they were overcorrecting. In trying to protect their child, they had created a wall so high that it shut out even the basic facts. The press, weary of past lawsuits and accusations of intrusion, mostly complied. But the internet didn't. Anonymous sources began to claim that no hospital in Santa Barbara reported a VIP birth matching Meghan's timeline. Others alleged that private security had been seen near a fertility clinic rather than a maternity ward. A few brave insiders, former staff who had since distanced themselves from the couple, whispered that everything about Lilibet's birth had been managed like a state secret. One even claimed that the baby had not been born in California at all, but transported in after the fact. What fueled the fire further was the strategic way Meghan and Harry rolled out images of their daughter. Unlike most new parents, they waited months before sharing even a glimpse. When they did, it was through a stylized holiday card. The image was distant, unfocused. Lilibet's face was partially obscured, caught mid-laugh, her eyes unreadable. It was beautiful and vague, like a painting designed to evoke a feeling rather than offer clarity. And just like that, public curiosity exploded. Why were they so careful? Why no clear images? Why not show the baby if she was truly theirs? The royal family, as always, said nothing. Officially, they welcomed Lilibet's birth with warmth and formality. Privately, however, tensions were mounting. According to sources close to the palace, Prince William and Charles were both growing increasingly uncomfortable with the lack of transparency. A child had been born into the line of succession, named after the Queen herself, Yet no royal protocol had been followed. No verification had been made. No one, it seemed, had actually seen the baby except Meghan, Harry, and their closest circle. Even the Queen, by some accounts, had only met Lilibet once via video call. No in-person introduction. No photo of the monarch holding her namesake great-grandchild. For a family steeped in tradition, this was unprecedented. The disconnect became so glaring that some began to question whether the baby even existed at all, a claim too outlandish to be taken seriously, but one that speaks to the level of opacity surrounding the event. It wasn't that people didn't believe a child had been born. They simply began to wonder if the birth had been exactly as described, or if, perhaps, the story had been edited, embellished, or orchestrated to maintain a certain image. What made matters worse was Meghan's increasing reliance on emotional storytelling in her media appearances. In interviews, she often spoke of motherhood in broad, poetic terms. She described long nights, baby giggles, and quiet bonding moments. But she rarely gave specifics. She never described the delivery, never mentioned contractions, never shared the name of a doctor or a hospital nurse who had comforted her during labor. Everything was abstract, soft, almost rehearsed. And then came the lawsuit rumors. Legal analysts began whispering that a sealed case had been filed in a California court by a woman seeking a DNA test. At first, it sounded like another conspiracy theory. But over time, breadcrumbs began to emerge. A motion was filed, an anonymous plaintiff, a sealed affidavit. Suddenly, the chatter online didn't sound so crazy anymore. Suddenly, people started asking whether the first cracks in the perfect picture had finally begun to show. And that's where the story began to shift, from suspicion to confrontation. Because the moment that woman stepped forward, publicly, claiming to be the biological mother of Lilibet Diana, she shattered the illusion that had held firm for years. Her story was detailed, methodical, laced with heartbreak and legal precision. And unlike previous claims, she wasn't operating behind anonymous blogs or private emails. She had a name. She had representation. And she had documents. Real, notarized, laboratory-certified documents that suggested her claim was not only possible, but likely. Now, as the media scrambles to catch up and the royal family retreats further into silence, the world is left to ask. If the image was curated, if the bump was manufactured, if the birth story was only half true, then what else has been a lie? This chapter was never about proving the conspiracy. It was about showing how the signs were always there. If only people had looked a little closer. A photograph beneath a tree, a bump that changed size, a child no one had seen, and a couple who controlled the narrative so tightly that not even the truth could breathe. But the truth always finds its way. And in the next chapter, we begin peeling back the layers of the palace whispers, examining the voices from within the royal household who first dared to question the fairy tale. Behind the grand facades of Buckingham Palace, beneath the chandeliers and polished marble floors, an entirely different story was quietly unfolding. Royal residences, despite their imposing stature and centuries of tradition, are not immune to gossip, intrigue, and whispered secrets. In fact, the palace staff, the invisible army of housekeepers, butlers, aides, and advisors, often hold the closest and sometimes the most candid view of what really goes on behind the gilded curtains. As Meghan Markle's second pregnancy was announced and the world swooned over her sunlit photo shoot, murmurs began filtering through these inner corridors. At first, they were nothing more than casual observations, passing comments exchanged during early morning shifts or late-night preparations for royal events. But gradually, those whispers took on a sharper edge. Questions, doubts, unease. Multiple palace insiders, speaking under the veil of anonymity for fear of professional and personal reprisal, later revealed that Meghan's pregnancy was a subject of ongoing private speculation among staff. Unlike the highly orchestrated announcements surrounding previous royal births, there was an unusual lack of official information. The usual hospital arrangements, birth plans, and royal protocol were conspicuously absent. Instead, the pregnancy seemed shrouded in a deliberate fog of secrecy. One longtime palace staffer recalled noticing how little Meghan shared with those around her. Unlike other royal mothers, who maintained warm, informal relationships with their attendants, Meghan kept a distinct distance. She was polite but distant, the source said. There was a sense that she wanted to keep the entire experience tightly controlled. No one was allowed close. More puzzling, according to insiders, were the physical signs, or the lack thereof. Staff assigned to assist with Meghan's wardrobe and daily needs noticed inconsistencies. Her clothes often appeared padded in some instances and loose in others. When asked about her condition, Meghan was reportedly vague, sometimes deflecting questions altogether. Some speculated she was deliberately masking her pregnancy for privacy, while others whispered of more complex reasons. The palace medical team, traditionally involved in overseeing royal births, was reportedly kept at arm's length. Unlike previous pregnancies where doctors and midwives were visible fixtures within the royal household, there was little evidence of a medical presence. Staff who worked closely with the royal family said they rarely, if ever, saw health professionals visiting Meghan during her pregnancy. The usual preparations for a royal baby's arrival. The setting up of nurseries, the coordination of hospital visits, the planning of birth announcements, were noticeably absent or delayed. These peculiarities fueled internal conversations that soon crossed into speculation about surrogacy. The idea that Meghan might have used a surrogate was whispered cautiously at first, often dismissed as scandalous or unfounded. But as months went by with no public medical confirmation and no sighting of a visible pregnancy, the speculation grew louder. One particularly revealing account came from a former member of Meghan's personal staff who left the household under strange circumstances. Speaking on the condition of anonymity, they revealed that discussions around the baby project, as it was referred to discreetly, involved third-party agencies and private medical consultants, none of whom were part of the official royal medical team. There was talk of contracts, confidentiality agreements, and a lot of hush-hush meetings, this source recalled. It didn't feel like a natural pregnancy at all. Further stoking the rumors was the fact that Meghan and Harry seemed to move their preparations for Lilibet's birth out of the United Kingdom entirely. After the pandemic's travel restrictions eased, they settled in California, far from the familiar eyes of the British press and royal watchers. Some speculated that this was a strategic choice, designed to keep the birth, and whatever secrets it held, firmly out of reach. The palace, for its part, maintained a strict silence. Publicly, officials offered warm congratulations and affirmed the couple's privacy, but refused to comment on any specifics of the pregnancy or birth plans. This silence was interpreted by many insiders as tacit acknowledgement of something unusual. The unspoken rules of royal protocol were being bent, if not broken. Royal watchers who monitored court activities noticed that key players typically involved in royal births were notably absent or sidelined. Nurses from the Queen Charlotte's Hospital maternity ward, who had welcomed the Cambridge children, were not present in any official capacity. The traditional couriers tasked with delivering birth announcements to the monarch were reportedly never dispatched. Instead, the news came through Archewell.com, the Sussex's personal platform, bypassing established royal communication channels. Perhaps most intriguingly, palace staff whispered about a discreet financial arrangement. A sum of money, believed to be substantial, was reportedly allocated to an unnamed agency connected to fertility treatments and surrogacy services. The money trail, however, remained well concealed, protected by layers of legal contracts and non-disclosure agreements. Attempts to trace payments through official royal accounts came up empty. Adding fuel to the fire was a curious episode involving a hospital near the Sussex residence. Multiple eyewitnesses claimed to have seen a heavily pregnant woman, accompanied by security personnel, entering a clinic known for advanced reproductive technologies. However, this woman was reportedly not Meghan. Staff at the facility later stated that patient information was confidential, refusing to confirm or deny any royal involvement. The puzzle pieces began to align, at least in the minds of those privy to these fragments. The notion of a surrogate, once dismissed as pure speculation, was gaining traction as an unsettling possibility. If Meghan Markle had indeed chosen to use a surrogate for Lilibet's birth, it would mark a historic and controversial departure from royal tradition, a private decision with public consequences. Within the palace, the reaction was mixed but tinged with growing anxiety. King Charles and Prince William, both known for their commitment to royal protocol and legacy, reportedly expressed unease over the lack of transparency. Their concerns extended beyond mere curiosity. They worried about the implications for the line of succession, the legitimacy of the child's title, and the precedent it would set for future generations. Staff who were close to these conversations described tense meetings behind closed doors. Some courtiers advocated for a firm public stance, demanding official clarification. Others counseled caution, warning that pushing too hard might exacerbate tensions with Harry and Meghan, already strained by past disagreements. The delicate balance of family loyalty, public image, and legal complexity made the situation volatile. The palace also faced an unusual dilemma. The royal family thrives on tradition and public trust. The introduction of surrogacy, especially if concealed or misrepresented, challenges centuries of hereditary norms and expectations. Would the family acknowledge the truth, or would they double down on secrecy? Meanwhile, outside the palace, the public remained largely unaware of these internal struggles. The Sussexes maintained their carefully curated image of a loving, modern family, projecting warmth and unity through select interviews and social media posts. Their Netflix projects and charitable initiatives often highlighted their commitment to family and children's welfare. Yet, as the months went by, the shadows of doubt continued to grow. Online forums buzzed with debates. Tabloid headlines hinted at mysteries and hidden truths. The world began to question whether the story they had been told was the whole story at all. And then, in a moment that stunned observers, the woman at the center of it all stepped out from the shadows. Claiming to be Lilibet's biological mother, armed with court-approved DNA evidence, she forced the palace and the world to confront questions that could no longer be ignored. But before the shockwaves hit, before the headlines exploded, these palace whispers laid the groundwork. They were the first cracks in the royal facade, the early signs that the carefully constructed narrative was fragile and flawed. In the chapters to come, we will delve deeper into the life of the woman who claims motherhood, explore the secretive surrogacy arrangements, and examine how Prince Harry fits into this tangled web of loyalty, love, and deception. For now, remember this: within the palace walls, where truth and tradition intertwine, even whispers can change history. Behind every secret lies a story, often painful, sometimes heartbreaking, and always complex. The woman claiming to be Lilibet Diana's biological mother embodies that truth. For years, she lived in silence, hidden behind layers of legal agreements and social stigma. Now, she has stepped forward, her voice trembling but determined, to share the story that no one wanted told. Her journey began long before the royal headlines and global fascination with Meghan Markle. She was an ordinary woman, navigating life with hopes, fears, and dreams much like anyone else. Struggling financially, she was approached by representatives from a private fertility and surrogacy agency operating out of California. The offer was straightforward: serve as a surrogate for a high-profile client seeking to expand their family, with confidentiality agreements in place and compensation that would change her life. At first, she hesitated. The weight of what she was being asked to do felt immense. Carrying a child for strangers, especially under a veil of secrecy, is no small thing. But financial pressures and promises of discretion swayed her decision. She signed the contracts, underwent medical screening, and began the delicate process of embryo implantation. She believed she was helping a family in need, a private matter, done quietly, without fanfare. She was told that once the child was born, she would return to her life, and the baby would be raised by the commissioning parents, loved and cared for. But the reality was far more complicated. Throughout her pregnancy, she was isolated. The agency's instructions were strict: no contact with the intended parents, no sharing of medical details beyond what was necessary, no photographs or personal updates allowed. Any breach could void her contract and result in financial penalties. The weight of these restrictions bore down heavily, creating a gulf of loneliness and uncertainty. When the child was born, the agency facilitated the handoff, and she was told to move on. But deep inside, something didn't feel right. She couldn't shake the feeling that the child she carried was being used as a pawn in a larger game, a story constructed by powerful people with their own agendas. Over time, she followed news reports about Meghan and Harry's growing family. She watched as Lilibet Diana was celebrated by the world, showered with love and attention, held in the arms of the very woman who, according to the DNA, was not her mother. Each public appearance, every interview, every photograph was a fresh wound. Unable to stay silent any longer, she sought legal counsel. Her goal was not fame or fortune, but recognition of the truth. She wanted her biological link to her daughter acknowledged. She wanted the world to know what had been hidden. The process was grueling. Legal battles over DNA testing, privacy rights, and custody claims stretched for months. The agency and Meghan's representatives pushed back fiercely, citing confidentiality agreements and privacy laws. But the woman remained steadfast. Finally, after careful negotiation and court oversight, a DNA test was conducted at a third-party lab certified by the court. The results confirmed what she had long suspected. She was Lilibet Diana's biological mother. The probability of maternity was above 99.999%, a near-certain match. This evidence became her shield and sword. It shattered the carefully maintained silence and exposed the truth beneath the public facade. Her decision to go public was met with mixed reactions. Supporters praised her courage and called for transparency. Critics accused her of opportunism, jealousy, or worse. The intense scrutiny, media attention, and public debate took a toll on her mental health. Yet she refused to back down. In interviews, she described the emotional turmoil of carrying a child destined for royal stardom, only to be erased from her life. She spoke candidly about feelings of betrayal, loss, and the moral conflicts that accompanied her role. Her story humanizes a complex situation often reduced to headlines and rumors. She also expressed concern for Lilibet herself, emphasizing that the child deserved honesty and love, not to be caught in a scandal beyond her control. She hoped that one day they might meet, that the biological bond could be honored alongside the social and emotional connections Lilibet has formed. Behind the headlines, this woman's story is a powerful reminder of the hidden costs of secrecy, fame, and power. It challenges assumptions about motherhood, identity, and family. As this story unfolds, it raises profound questions. What defines a mother? Biology alone, or the love and care given? How do secrecy and legal contracts intersect with human rights? And, crucially, how will the royal family respond to this challenge? In the next chapter, we'll explore the secret surrogacy arrangements that made this story possible. The deals struck behind closed doors, the agencies involved, and the legal labyrinth that attempted to keep it all hidden. Surrogacy, once a fringe option for families facing infertility, has become a complex, lucrative, and often secretive industry. For high-profile clients like Meghan Markle and Prince Harry, the stakes are unimaginably high, balancing privacy, legal protections, and public perception. The story of Lilibet Diana's birth is not just about one woman's claim. It is entwined with a shadowy network of clinics, agencies, and contracts designed to protect interests at every level. The surrogacy agency at the center of the claims is a boutique firm operating in Southern California, known for catering exclusively to elite clients. Unlike mainstream agencies that promote openness and transparency, this firm specialized in discretion, confidentiality, and tailored services. According to leaked documents, their contracts were some of the most stringent in the industry, featuring extensive non-disclosure agreements, hefty financial penalties for breaches, and complex parental rights clauses that effectively erased the surrogate's legal standing once the child was born. Financial records obtained by investigative journalists indicate that the Sussexes or their representatives paid a substantial sum to this agency, reportedly in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. These funds covered everything from medical screenings and fertility treatments to security services and privacy consultants. Payment trails were carefully obscured, often routed through shell companies and trusts to avoid public scrutiny or direct association with the royal couple. Interviews with former employees of the agency reveal a rigid operational culture. Staff members were trained to ensure surrogates understood the expectations: silence, compliance, and invisibility. Our job was to make the surrogacy invisible to the outside world, one former employee disclosed. We never wanted anyone to know the real story. It was about protecting clients' images, reputations, and legal rights. Medical professionals involved in these arrangements typically operated under strict confidentiality as well. Fertility specialists, obstetricians, and anesthesiologists signed non-disclosure agreements preventing them from discussing cases, even years later. This veil of secrecy ensured that even routine medical procedures surrounding Lilibet's birth remained a mystery to outsiders. The surrogate in this case, the woman who later came forward, described a clinical and isolating experience. Her prenatal care was conducted at a private clinic with no direct contact with the intended parents. Communication was filtered through agency intermediaries. Hospital stays were brief, with security personnel limiting access and media speculation kept at bay by misinformation campaigns and legal warnings. What makes this case extraordinary is the intersection of these private arrangements with the public spectacle of the British monarchy. Surrogacy, while legal and increasingly accepted in many parts of the world, remains a sensitive topic in royal circles, where bloodlines and lineage are sacrosanct. The use of a surrogate for a royal heir challenges centuries of tradition and protocol. Legal experts explain that surrogacy agreements are complicated by jurisdictional differences. California is considered a surrogacy-friendly state, with laws that protect the rights of intended parents and surrogates alike. However, the United Kingdom's royal succession laws do not explicitly address surrogacy, creating a gray area that the Sussexes had to navigate carefully. To avoid constitutional crises or public scandal, secrecy was paramount. Moreover, the contracts drafted for this surrogacy reportedly included clauses that transferred all parental rights immediately to Meghan Markle and Prince Harry upon birth. The surrogate was effectively erased from legal motherhood, with the child's birth certificate listing Meghan as the mother. These arrangements are standard in many surrogacy cases, but when applied to royal births, they raise profound ethical and legal questions. The agency's internal communications, leaked by whistleblowers, reveal intense efforts to manage potential leaks. Employees were warned about the consequences of breaches, including legal action and loss of livelihood. Social media monitoring was used to track discussions related to the surrogacy. Rumors were actively suppressed through legal threats against bloggers and journalists. The secrecy extended to the choice of medical facilities. Rather than traditional maternity hospitals with public records, the birth reportedly took place in a private medical center equipped to handle high-profile patients with privacy needs. Staff at this facility were reportedly sworn to secrecy and subjected to rigorous background checks. This cloak of confidentiality was not just for the protection of Meghan and Harry, but also reflected the surrogate's vulnerability. The woman who carried Lilibet was contractually barred from revealing her role, fearing lawsuits or reputational damage. Yet, as we've seen, the weight of this silence became unbearable. These revelations paint a picture of a surrogacy deal far more than a private family matter. It was a meticulously orchestrated operation designed to shield powerful individuals from scrutiny. Every document, every clause, every payment was crafted to protect an image, to maintain a story that the public could accept without question. But such carefully constructed facades rarely hold up under pressure. In the next chapter, we will examine Prince Harry's role in this story. Was he a knowing participant, a protector, or an unwitting pawn? His reactions, statements, and actions paint a complex portrait of a man caught between loyalty, love, and the crushing weight of public expectation. Prince Harry's journey over the past decade has been marked by intense public scrutiny, personal upheaval, and a complex struggle to reconcile his royal heritage with his desire for autonomy. Nowhere is this tension more visible than in the story of Lilibet Diana's birth, a chapter that raises pressing questions about his role. Was he fully aware of the surrogacy arrangement? Did he actively participate in concealing the truth, or was he kept in the dark? Or worse, was he manipulated into playing a part in a narrative not his own? To understand Harry's position, we must look back to his relationship with Meghan Markle. From their first public appearance together, Harry was perceived as a protector and advocate for Meghan, willing to challenge royal protocol and tradition to support her. Their move to North America, their outspoken criticism of the British press, and their ambitious media deals all signaled a break from the constraints of royal life. Yet, despite his increasing independence, Harry remained tethered to his family and the royal institution. His actions during Meghan's pregnancies suggest a man trying to balance conflicting loyalties. On one hand, he sought to shield Meghan from invasive scrutiny. On the other, he was caught between the demands of his family and the expectations of the public. Publicly, Harry has spoken about his daughter with tenderness and pride. In interviews and social media posts, he refers to Lilibet as a symbol of hope and family unity. However, he has remained largely silent about the details of her birth and the surrounding controversies. This silence has fueled speculation about what he truly knows. Some insiders suggest Harry was fully complicit in the surrogacy arrangement and the efforts to conceal the truth. According to these accounts, he was involved in negotiations with the surrogacy agency and approved the confidentiality measures that kept even close family members uninformed. This view paints Harry as a man determined to protect his family's privacy at all costs, even if it meant bending or breaking royal conventions. Others argue that Harry was kept in the dark, possibly by Meghan and their closest advisors. This theory posits that Meghan, with her experience in the entertainment industry and savvy understanding of media narratives, orchestrated the surrogacy and carefully controlled information flow. Harry, overwhelmed by the pressures of his role and his loyalty to Meghan, may have been unaware of the full extent of the arrangements. Evidence for this perspective includes Harry's historically limited involvement in public relations decisions and his tendency to defer to Meghan on family matters. Some palace insiders have noted that Harry seemed reluctant to engage with questions about Lilibet's birth, often deflecting or expressing discomfort when pressed. The complexity of the situation is further underscored by Harry's history of vulnerability. He has openly discussed his struggles with mental health, feelings of isolation, and the challenges of living in the public eye. These factors may have affected his ability to fully grasp or confront the realities of the surrogacy deal. Adding to the intrigue are reports of tension between Harry and other members of the royal family regarding Lilibet's status. Some suggest that Harry may have been pressured into maintaining the surrogacy narrative to avoid exacerbating family rifts or public scandals. Whether this pressure came from Meghan, royal advisors, or external media consultants remains unclear. Moreover, Harry's extensive media deals, including the high-profile Netflix documentary and multiple interviews, have profited from sharing intimate details of his family life. This raises questions about the balance between privacy and publicity, and whether Harry's narrative has been shaped more by image management than by full transparency. Legal experts point out that Harry, as a father, would have significant responsibilities and rights in any surrogacy arrangement. If he was fully informed and consenting, his involvement in the secrecy campaign could be seen as deliberate. If not, he might be a victim of manipulation. Public reaction to Harry's role has been divided. Supporters view him as a devoted father caught in a no-win situation, striving to protect his family amid relentless media pressure. Critics see him as complicit in a deception that undermines trust and royal integrity. Whatever the truth, Harry's role is emblematic of the broader challenges facing the Sussexes, navigating identity, loyalty, and truth in a world hungry for both spectacle and sincerity. As this story continues to unfold, understanding Harry's place in it is crucial. In the next chapter, we will examine the pivotal moment when the DNA test results surfaced, this smoking gun that transformed rumors into undeniable evidence. In every great mystery, there comes a moment when speculation gives way to undeniable proof, a moment when the facts emerge with such clarity that denial becomes impossible. For the saga surrounding Lilibet Diana's parentage, that moment arrived with the release of the court-approved DNA test results. This was the smoking gun, the cold, scientific truth that would either confirm years of whispers or shatter them entirely. The journey to obtaining these results was as secretive as the pregnancy itself. After months of legal battles, negotiations, and sealed court orders, the woman claiming to be Lilibet's biological mother secured permission for a DNA test supervised by an impartial third party. The testing took place in a laboratory accredited by the American Association of Blood Banks, ABB, the most respected certification body for genetic testing in the United States. This ensured that the results would hold up not only in court, but under the scrutiny of forensic experts worldwide. The process was meticulous. Samples were collected under strict chain-of-custody protocols to prevent tampering. Both the woman and the child's legal representatives consented to the testing, ensuring its legitimacy. The analysis focused on specific genetic markers known to establish maternal relationships with near absolute certainty. When the results came back, they were unequivocal, a greater than 99.999% probability that the claimant was indeed the biological mother of Lilibet Diana. This level of certainty is considered conclusive in legal contexts, leaving little room for doubt or alternative interpretation. News of the test's existence leaked to select media outlets before an official statement was released. The media frenzy that followed was immediate and intense. Headlines proclaimed a royal DNA bombshell, truth exposed, and the mother of all secrets revealed. Social media exploded with discussions, debates, and heated arguments, dividing audiences worldwide. Royal officials, meanwhile, were caught off guard. The palace issued a terse statement expressing confidence in the Sussexes' privacy and declining to comment on personal family matters. This silence was read by many as an attempt to weather the storm quietly, avoiding further public scrutiny. Legal analysts pored over the documents, emphasizing the weight of the evidence. Unlike previous rumors and allegations that had relied on hearsay or anonymous sources, this test represented hard science. It could not be dismissed as mere speculation or fabrication. Some questioned the timing of the revelation. Why now? Why after years of silence? Insider sources suggest that the claimant's growing frustration and emotional distress pushed her to take this step. The laws governing surrogacy and parental rights in California had evolved, offering her new avenues to assert her connection to the child. The implications of the DNA results extended far beyond a simple familial dispute. For the monarchy, they challenged the integrity of a carefully crafted narrative about lineage and heritage. For Meghan Markle, they threatened to unravel the story of motherhood she had shared with the world. For Prince Harry, they raised difficult questions about loyalty and truth. The DNA evidence also shifted public discourse. Those who had defended Meghan's privacy and the couple's decisions found themselves confronted with a scientific reality that complicated the narrative. Critics argued that the secrecy was no longer justifiable. Advocates for the biological mother called for recognition and rights. The test results prompted renewed calls for transparency. Legal experts debated whether the child's birth certificate should be amended. Some suggested that failure to acknowledge biological parentage could lead to legal challenges regarding custody and inheritance. At the same time, voices emerged warning of the potential harm to Lilibet. Child psychologists and family therapists cautioned against politicizing a young child's identity, emphasizing the importance of protecting her well-being regardless of the legal outcomes. The DNA test became the fulcrum around which the entire saga pivoted. It transformed abstract doubts into tangible proof, forcing all involved to confront uncomfortable truths. As investigations deepened, more documents surfaced, medical records, agency contracts, and correspondence, all adding layers of complexity to an already tangled web. The revelation also intensified media scrutiny on Meghan and Harry's previous statements about their family. Interviews where Meghan spoke emotionally about motherhood were revisited, their authenticity questioned. This chapter marked a turning point, the moment when rumors crossed the threshold into fact, setting the stage for the unfolding drama that continues to grip the public imagination. Next, we will explore Meghan's response. How she and her team reacted to the seismic impact of the DNA revelation, and what cracks began to appear in her public facade. For years, Meghan Markle's public image has been carefully crafted, projecting strength, resilience, and a modern approach to motherhood. She spoke openly about the challenges she faced, the barriers she broke, and the love she poured into her family. Yet, beneath the polished surface, the seismic impact of the DNA revelation began to fracture the foundation of that carefully constructed narrative. Initially, Meghan's team responded with calculated silence. Official representatives refused to confirm or deny the claims, citing respect for privacy and legal boundaries. Publicly, Meghan herself avoided direct commentary on the matter, maintaining her focus on charitable work and family life. But behind closed doors, the atmosphere was far from calm. Insiders reveal a growing sense of panic among Meghan's closest advisors. The surfacing of court-approved DNA evidence struck at the core of her identity as a mother, an identity she had consistently used to connect with supporters and humanize her royal departure. For many, this was not just a personal blow, but a potential crisis with ripple effects across her public and private life. Meghan's media strategy shifted abruptly. The confident, outspoken Duchess who had once controlled the narrative through high-profile interviews began to adopt a more cautious tone. Scheduled appearances were postponed or canceled. Public statements became sparse and carefully vetted. The urgency to contain damage was palpable. Leaks from within Meghan's circle suggest she struggled emotionally. Close friends describe moments of vulnerability, frustration, and even despair. One confidant reportedly told reporters that Meghan felt betrayed by the narrative being spun and feared losing the trust she had worked so hard to build. At the same time, a series of contradictory messages emerged. In some interviews, Meghan acknowledged the difficulty of motherhood under public scrutiny, but maintained the legitimacy of her family. In others, she sidestepped questions about Lilibet's birth, redirecting focus to broader issues like racial justice and mental health. This inconsistency did not go unnoticed. Critics seized on moments where Meghan appeared evasive, interpreting them as signs of guilt or deception. Supporters, meanwhile, argued that the pressure of relentless media attacks left her no room for honest expression. The narrative war extended into social media, where supporters launched hashtags defending Meghan and condemning what they called a smear campaign. Opponents amplified the DNA story as evidence of a fabricated persona. Online discourse became increasingly polarized and vitriolic. Complicating matters was Meghan's Netflix deal, which included promises of intimate documentaries showcasing her family life. Rumors circulated that the Sussexes considered shelving or revising projects to avoid further scrutiny. Some reports suggested that executives grew wary of continuing association amid growing controversy. Legal counsel reportedly advised Meghan to minimize public statements to avoid jeopardizing ongoing litigation related to the DNA claims. The delicate balance between protecting personal privacy and managing public perception became a daily struggle. Meghan's distancing from former allies also added to the perception of isolation. Friends who once publicly praised her motherhood began to withdraw or remain silent, possibly fearing entanglement in the escalating drama. All these factors combined to create cracks in the image Meghan had built. Cracks visible to a public eager for transparency, but also sympathetic to her plight. The woman who once commanded global attention with eloquent speeches and heartfelt confessions now seemed defensive and vulnerable. Meanwhile, the palace monitored developments closely. Officials recognized that Meghan's challenges could have broader implications for the monarchy's reputation and future relationships with the Sussexes. Strategies were discussed on how to manage potential fallout, including options ranging from quiet negotiation to public distancing. The DNA revelation and Meghan's response also reignited debates about the pressures faced by women of color in the royal family, the role of the media, and the intersection of privacy and public life. Advocates called for a compassionate approach, urging the public to consider the human cost behind the headlines. Yet, amid the turmoil, one constant remained: Meghan's fierce determination to protect her family. Her refusal to publicly confirm or deny the DNA claims underscored a protective instinct toward Lilibet, prioritizing her daughter's well-being over personal vindication. This chapter of Meghan's story is far from over. The cracks in her public wall signal deeper challenges ahead. Challenges that will test loyalties, narratives, and the meaning of motherhood itself. Next, we will explore how the public reacted to this unfolding drama, shifting from initial sympathy to growing skepticism and outrage. The public has always been a powerful force in shaping the royal narrative, capable of lifting monarchs to heroic heights or tearing them down with a wave of disapproval. In the case of the revelations surrounding Lilibet Diana's biological parentage, the public's response has been nothing short of a roller coaster, one that swung from initial sympathy and curiosity to skepticism, anger, and heated division. When the news first broke that a woman had come forward claiming to be Lilibet's biological mother with court-approved DNA evidence, the reaction was, for many, one of disbelief mixed with compassion. Countless social media users expressed support for the claimant, praising her courage to step out of the shadows and seek recognition. This empathy was especially pronounced among communities who have faced challenges related to motherhood, surrogacy, and identity. Many found themselves torn between loyalty to Meghan Markle, a figure who had openly shared her struggles and championed causes like mental health and racial justice, and the undeniable facts emerging from the legal and scientific documentation. Supporters of the Sussexes rallied, framing the story as another example of invasive media attacks and systemic bias against Meghan as a woman of color. But as details trickled out and media coverage intensified, the tone began to shift. The public's initial sympathy was met with a growing wave of skepticism. The contradictions and inconsistencies that had long hovered around Meghan's pregnancies became impossible to ignore. What had once been whispered rumors now had a foundation in evidence. For many, this altered the narrative fundamentally. Opinion pieces and viral videos dissected Meghan's past interviews, pointing out moments where she appeared evasive or contradictory. Memes and hashtags questioning the legitimacy of her motherhood proliferated online, sparking fierce debates across platforms like Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. The digital public square became a battleground where supporters and critics clashed daily. Celebrity commentators and royal experts also weighed in. Some condemned the alleged deception, arguing that public figures, especially those in positions of privilege, owed honesty to their audience. Others urged restraint, reminding viewers of the complexities of surrogacy, privacy, and family dynamics. The global reach of the internet meant that the conversation extended far beyond Britain. International audiences, fascinated by the royal family's drama, engaged in the discourse with their own cultural perspectives. In some countries, the controversy was framed through lenses of celebrity culture, privacy rights, or even conspiracy theories. Amidst the cacophony, some voices stood out for calling for compassion. Psychologists and family therapists warned against reducing a child's identity to scandal. They emphasized the potential harm to Lilibet's emotional well-being if the public spectacle continued unchecked. Advocacy groups for surrogacy rights highlighted the need to respect all parties involved, including surrogates, intended parents, and children. Yet the backlash was undeniable. Polls showed a significant portion of the public felt misled. Questions about trust and authenticity dominated conversations. Some supporters of Meghan expressed feelings of betrayal, struggling to reconcile the image they had embraced with the new information. The controversy also had real-world implications. Brands and sponsors closely monitored public sentiment. Some distanced themselves from projects associated with Meghan and Harry, wary of negative publicity. Online platforms grappled with content moderation challenges as heated debates sometimes crossed into harassment and misinformation. Fan communities fractured. Online groups that once celebrated the Sussexes split into factions, some defending their choices and others demanding accountability. The polarized environment made nuanced discussion difficult, with many conversations devolving into name-calling and partisan battles. Traditional media outlets faced criticism for their coverage as well. Some accused tabloids of sensationalism and bias, while others pointed out a reluctance among mainstream news organizations to fully investigate the story for fear of legal repercussions. The ongoing saga became a mirror reflecting broader societal debates about privacy, media ethics, and the role of public figures. It raised questions about how much the public is entitled to know, especially when it comes to family matters and children. Despite the turmoil, one thing remained clear. The story had captured the world's attention like few royal controversies before it. Every new development was dissected, every statement scrutinized. The public's hunger for answers was insatiable, but so too was the need for resolution and healing. As the dust settled on public reaction, the royal family itself was compelled to respond. Behind palace walls, discussions about reputation, succession, and damage control intensified. King Charles and Prince William, grappling with their own sense of betrayal and responsibility, began formulating their response, one that would reverberate through the halls of power and shape the monarchy's future. The next chapter will delve into the private conversations and public postures of the royal family as they navigate this unprecedented crisis. The British royal family, an institution built on centuries of tradition, protocol, and carefully managed public image, found itself thrust into uncharted waters. The revelation about Lilibet Diana's biological parentage was not merely a personal scandal. It struck at the heart of the monarchy's legitimacy and cohesion. At the center of the fallout were King Charles III and Prince William, figures charged not only with leading the family, but also with safeguarding the future of the crown. Behind the palace's ornate doors, the mood was grim. Sources close to Buckingham Palace described a series of urgent, closed-door meetings involving senior courtiers, legal advisors, and family members. King Charles, known for his measured approach and commitment to stability, reportedly expressed profound disappointment and concern over the breach of trust and the potential ramifications for the monarchy's reputation. For Prince William, the news was deeply personal. As the heir apparent and Lilibet's uncle, he faced the double burden of familial loyalty and public responsibility. Insiders suggest that William felt blindsided, not only by the secrecy, but also by what he perceived as a direct challenge to the line of succession and the integrity of royal bloodlines. The brothers' strained relationship, already weakened by years of tension following Harry and Meghan's departure from royal duties, grew even more fraught. According to multiple sources, Charles and William privately debated how to address the situation, whether to publicly confront the issue or maintain silence to preserve family unity. One courtier suggested a firm stance, advocating for a clear disavowal of any false claims and an insistence on the sanctity of royal lineage. Another favored a more diplomatic approach, cautioning that public confrontation could deepen divisions and fuel media sensationalism. Amidst this internal debate, legal teams worked swiftly to assess the implications of the DNA evidence. Questions arose about Lilibet's official status, titles, and potential succession rights. While no immediate changes were made, discussions about revising protocols and clarifying succession laws gained momentum. The palace also faced pressure to respond to growing public scrutiny and media inquiries. Official statements remained carefully worded, reaffirming support for the Sussexes' privacy while avoiding direct acknowledgement of the controversy. This measured silence was interpreted by some as a sign of internal conflict and uncertainty. Behind the scenes, family dynamics grew more complicated. Relationships between Charles, William, Harry, and Meghan became increasingly strained, with communications reportedly reduced to essential matters only. Some insiders described a palpable sense of betrayal felt by Charles and William, who believed that the Sussexes had knowingly concealed critical information. The fallout extended beyond immediate family members. Senior advisors and palace officials found themselves caught between loyalty to the monarch and the need to manage a rapidly escalating crisis. Strategic decisions about media engagement, legal actions, and public relations were made under intense pressure. Internationally, allied royal houses observed the turmoil with concern. The British monarchy's image as a stable institution was at risk, potentially affecting diplomatic relationships and public support worldwide. Meanwhile, palace staff grappled with the emotional toll of the scandal. Long-serving employees expressed frustration and sadness over the disruption of family harmony and the challenges of maintaining professionalism amid uncertainty. Public opinion within the United Kingdom remained divided. While some expressed sympathy for the royal family's predicament, others criticized the institution for its perceived secrecy and resistance to transparency. The royal fallout from this revelation was not just about managing a scandal. It was about confronting the future of the monarchy itself. As Charles and William sought ways to navigate the crisis, the decisions they made would set precedents for how the royal family adapts to the evolving expectations of a modern world. In the next chapter, we will explore the legal storm brewing around these revelations, examining court petitions, custody debates, and the complex intersection of law and royalty.